Hello friends and everyone, welcome back to this exciting course on logging traces in your Synchronous microservices using OpenTelemetry, one of the most powerful tools for distributed tracing in modern systems. In this course, I'll walk you through how to trace and monitor your microservices not only to the console but also to Honeycomb, an external service tailored for managing traces in distributed systems. The question is, why tracing is so important? In today's world of microservices, having visibility into how your services communicate with one another is crucial. Whether it is a simple API call or it's a complex transaction spanning multiple services, tracing helps you diagnose performance bottlenecks, identify latency issues, and quickly debug problems in production. There are a lot of packages that can help you achieve this, but the question is, why choose OpenTelemetry? OpenTelemetry is an open source and vendor neutral observability framework that allows you to collect traces, metrics, and log from your applications. It is also widely supported and integrates easily with popular tools like Honeycomb, Grafana, and Jaeger. It is also designed to standardize the observability framework, meaning you get more flexibility in switching vendors or adopting new technologies without reworking your entire logging setups. It supports a lot of languages as part of integration. .NET2 is part of these languages. And if a package is widely used, it means there's always support for that. So when you are stuck, you can have your way out. That is the reason why I introduced OpenTelemetry in logging tracing in your distributed system. We have asynchronous microservice, or that's asynchronous communication in microservice, and also have synchronous. But why did I choose synchronous microservices? In this course, we focus on synchronous microservices most, which means one service waits for the response of another before continuing. Understanding and tracing these types of microservices is vital because they rely heavily on direct API calls, and any latency in one service can cause a cascading delay across others. Synchronous services are often more prone to issues like timeout, making trace logging essential for tracking where and why failures occur. So this course has a lot for you. We'll be creating 2 projects in our solution, product API and other API. That is what I've been using in projects or in courses. So with this, we're going to make an HTTP call from an API, other API to product API purposely to get product data before populating other summary. And after that, we're going to integrate this OpenTelemetry while we watch the traces of the services being happening. So let's get started. Now make sure you have your Visual Studio 2022 or higher installed. Launch it. Now let's first add solution. We're going to be adding 2 projects, that is a product API and our other API. So click on create new project and we're going to choose blank solution. Let me give it a name. So maybe demo. And I would say Synchronous Microservices. So I'm going to say that tracing is Synchronous Microservices. Alright, then choose a location for this project. Click on create to create the solution. Now we have solution. Let's go and add the project. Let's add other API as well. Since we want to focus on the tracing or integrating OpenTelemetry, We want to actually get connected to a database easily by using the feature introduced, that is a scaffolded version. So let's use this feature to create the controller and everything for us. But before we do that, we make sure we add a model. So let's right click on product API and let's add a product model. So give it a name, and the name that I'm going to give here, that is product. So within this product, let me have my ID. That is what normally I do. So I have my ID here. I have my product name. Then I have my product price. So that is a product information or product data that I need. Right click on product. Now go to add and select new scaffolded item. In here, you make sure you go in for an API. You choose API controller with action using the EF core. Click on add. And let's choose our model, which is product. DB context, we have none, so we're going to create one. And now with this is going to be product, not API, product DB context. So add it. Now for database, there are two options. You can decide to use any other database at all. Here we're going to be using an SQL, and it's an SQL Lite. We have an SQL Server and SQL Lite. Now with OpenTelemetry has a package which support SQL Lite. That's an SQL Server. And now within that, it gives you the detailed information about the database when you use an SQL Server. When you use an SQL Lite, you do not actually have a full information about the database. So we're going to be trying both. Okay. In here, let's use an SQL Server. Then we can install the SQLite package as well. So give it a name to the controller, and in here I'm going to say product controller. Click on add, and that is what we need. So let's wait while it downloads this package and scaffold this setup for us. Alright, so this feature is done, and you can see we have a controller created automatically for us. That is a product controller, so we can move this straight to the controllers folder. Okay, so when you open that, you have our product DB context, and now with this DB context, we need to include namespace. So it's coming from the application that is an other API. Okay. So this should be here instead. I think I've moved from product to other, right? Where should it be that? So this should come from the other API. So that's the product API. Let's delete from the other. Okay. So this is our context. We have our product DB context specified. We have a connection string in the app.setting.json. So with this, let me modify this to suit my own. And for the database, this is demo. Saying product DB. Let's remove all this. Aside from that, we can modify this. So trust server certificate. Set this to true. Okay, so I think we are good. When you go to program.cs file, we have it specified in here, and that is it. Use an SQL server. Now from our controller, let's make sure it is fixed. So product So the namespace, alright, so let's make sure I put that controller, and you have a product controller. We have it appeared here, so it means we need to move this out, and I think the issue is gone. So we can rebuild solution to make sure everything is intact. So that is done. Let's go and add migration. So you make sure you set the product API as a default or as a startup project, and here with the default project you make sure you do same. So you can see we have product API and a product API. In here, let's add migration. Give it any name at all. After creating the file, we're going to update it. So we wait. Now update database. So we have our database and table created. We have a controller also created, so we can go ahead and now test this and check it out. So when you check our, you can see we have our product API here. We can go ahead and add, update or perform CRUD on product. So you can do same. Test it up and see if all is set. Now execute this. Alright, so you can see that it is done. So it tells you that we are able to connect to the database. We have our data being inserted. Great. Let's go and do same to the product. So let's close this. Now we're going to close our product API and I go to the other API. So from the solution, let's close this. Note, open the other API. In here, let's create our model. So that will be an order model. Now with this order, what do we need? We need, since we're going to be saving it, we need an ID. So from that, we have the product ID. Product ID that you want to order. Then we have quantity. So this is quantity. Let's also do same to what we've done. We did to the product API. So right click on other API, then go to add new scaffolded item. We're going to choose an API, CRUD endpoint, add, choose your DB context. So your model is an order model. DB context we don't have, so let's create new one, and which should be order DB context. SQL, that's all you need. Order controller, add. Now let's wait for this to do same as it did in the product API. Alright, this is also done, so you can cross check and confirm. So from our program.cs file, this is our connection string registered order DB context. From app settings, let's modify it as well. So demo sync order DB, that is my database name. Then trusted connection to true, and here change to trust. Server certificates set also to true. Save this. The next thing to do is let's rebuild this and add migration. That is also done. So you make sure you put up your package manager console, set the product API as startup, set same as default, then add migration, update database, So that is done. Now let's go and run this. Let's try and make an order. We have product ID of 1, quantity 10. Click on execute. This should save in the database. Let's check it out. And yep, we have it. So you can see we have an ID of 1, product ID, and now the quantity that we provided. Okay, so our product API and our other API are working. Now the next thing that we're going to be doing here is we're going to integrate this OpenTelemetry and log the traces to the console. After that, we learn how we can integrate the Honeycomb, that is an external site that we can push our log to. So let's close this, go to Solution Explorer. Now in the product other API, before we integrate the Honeycomb or the OpenTelemetry, we need to get an order summary. We need to make a request to the product API and get a product info when we provide the ID of that specific product, so we can get product name and quantity, right? So in this case, let's add a model to the other API, and let's say here this is order summary. Now with this order summary, we need our ID, that is an order ID. We need product ID. Then we need product name. Which should be string. Then we need product price. We need ordered quantity. And last one, we need total amount. Now we can go ahead and set this straightforward. So that is product price multiplied by the ordered quantity. That gives you the total amount. Okay, let's go to our controller and let's add one method. So order controller, let's push this controller to the orders controller to controllers folder. So in here, let's make sure we extract this. Then we can say that here it is private async task, which takes in a list of, which comes out with a list of products. So that is an order. So we say get orders. Now we can call this method here. So return OK with a response of this. Okay, so we're going to have a method that is HTTP get. We call this a summary. So let's have our async task, action results. then get summary. So let's get others. Let's call this others method to get us this others. After that, let's create a list. Let's loop through the others that we have. So before we add this is what we're going to be doing. We want to call this product API, one of its product controller, that is a get product by ID. We want to specify the product ID and then get the product data before we populate this order summary. So this should be the others, this one. So we're going to say that summary, or that is this list dot add. So we're going to have new order summary, and in here let's go and populate this. So we have ordered ID, this ordered ID. I think, yeah, the mistake here, right? You need to update it. We can use that. So let's go back to this order controller, and on this here we can say it is this order dot ID. We have product ID, and it is coming from this order dot product ID. We have price. So this product price, where can we get it from? We can get it from an API call. So let's inject our HTTP client. Now once you make a call, once you loop through, you want to make a call to the API and then get the specific product data based on the ID that we're going to provide. So we're going to say that results, or let's have product. So await, we have our client dot get from JSON async, and now here we need to provide this product model. So we could have added a class, C# class library, and we move all these models in there. So we need not to create it again because we have it already. But since we did not do that, let's go to our product API and copy the product itself, come to the order API and paste it here. You make sure you change the name from product to order. Then in the controller, you see it has added already. Then let's go and get the address of this API. Go to properties, then line settings. Let's grab the HTTPS. So we copy this. Let's go back to our order controller. And then it is slash API and then product. We need to pass an ID. And here we need to pass an order.product ID. Okay. So after we have the product information, we can go ahead and say product.price. Then we have our product name, product.name. Okay, these are the properties we need to provide values to. So after that, you want to return this list. So return this list, but it is not just list. You can return okay with the list. So since we are using primary constructor, we cannot be using the traditional one. So let's grab this and add it here so we can remove this. Okay, so now that we have this set, let's go to the other API, program.cs file. Let's add HTTP service. To add a client, let's rebuild project. So let's try this. So let's go in there and set configure startup project. You want to start both projects. So we have added product already. So let's push this to one side. And now when we come to the other, we've already made an order, isn't it? So when we click on get this, let's see, we have to get an order that we have made. Okay, so there is an order that we made. Now let's go and get order summary, and here it's going to connect to the other API, and I'll get info about that specific data or product before returning a summary to us. Let's wait and see whether they're going to have a product name, price, quantity, and the price, and the total amount as well. Okay, so when we check, yes, we have everything. We have total amount, we have price, but quantity, we don't have quantity. Let's check from our other controller. So we did not provide quantity. Okay, I think this solves the problem. All right, so let's say we have this set, everything is working. Now let's go and introduce delay here. So this, let's have a wait. We're going to be using this, we're introducing delay based on, because of the OpenTelemetry that we want to integrate and now check the trace. Okay, so let's await tax the delay. We can delay here 5 seconds. Let's save this. Now from our product API, let's go to the controller, solution, product API, and our controller. Let's also do same to the get product by ID. This, let's introduce delay. We can make this maybe 6 seconds to be okay for this. So we have a huge delay. Okay, so when we run this again, we might see the time it takes to get data when you click on summary. So when we try the summary again, now there's a huge delay. Let's wait and see the number of times it's going to take to execute this method. So you can see we have the data all right, but it took us about 11.94 seconds to get this done. Yes, because of the delay that we introduced. All right, so let's close this and let's integrate the OpenTelemetry. So we need to install packages. Now we need to integrate this in both projects so we can have access to or issues going on within the two projects. So let's first tackle with the other API. So right click on dependencies, manage NuGet packages. So search for OpenTelemetry. And install this. So once you have this installed in, we need to also install exporter.console. That will enable us to see everything in the console. So if you want to log to the console, you need this package. Let's also install supportive protocol. So that is an OpenTelemetry.exporter.OpenTelemetry protocol. Install this package as well. Let's install the hosting. Now let's install the instrumentation. So we have 3 instrumentations that you're going to be installing. The first one is the ASP.NET Core. That is when you have access to a database, an internal process that is going to handle that. We have the HTTP for an external service. Then we have an SQL client when you have an SQL database integrated. So .http. And for the SQL client, make sure you include pre-release. If you don't do that, you're not going to have it because it is in the release mode. I think 1.9.0 is a beta.1. So you can see from here, you need to make sure you check it before you search for that. Install this as well. Alright, so to verify the packages being installed, so let's say from our other API, these are the packages. Now since we have same in our product, I'm going to grab all this, then I'll go to the product. Maybe I can unload this, then from the unload I'll just paste it, save, and I reload. That's a smart way to skip copying or installing them one after the other again. Now let's rebuild our project. So let's go to our product API. Now in there we check our program.cs file, and in here there are quite few things that we need to do to get this done. Let's first create our service name. So service name, since this is the product API, the service name is going to be a product API. So I'm going to have constant, it's a string, then service name. So this is product API service. Then do you want to provide version? This is a starting one, so normally I'll set up to 1.0.0. Now let's go and add the service. So we say builder.services.add OpenTelemetry. Then in here we're going to say configure resource. Now with this resource, let's specify an option to that. Now resource.add service name. So let's add service. Now this service provide the name. This is going to be used to group your tracing in your Honeycomb as well, also in the console. We can also add the version if possible. Then once you have this, we are not done. Let's go and add with tracing. So you can see we have with login, with metrics, with tracing. We want to focus today on tracing. Now with tracing, in that we need to provide an option as well. So we say tracing. Now with this tracing, we can have access to tracing dot then add ASP.NET Core instrumentation. I think let me put this in a new line. Then dot add, we install 3 packages. We also have an HTTP client implementation to handle all HTTP calls. And lastly, we have dot add SQL client. Now SQL client is also going to handle all communications or information to a database using the SQL. Okay, now after we are done with that, let's put this in the console. So we're going to say dot add console exporter, and that is all. So this will enable us to log our trace to the console. Let's terminate this. That is all you need to do. It's quite simple. So once you are done with this, let's save this. Let's run. Since we integrated into the product, let's run only the product. While this runs, make sure you check for your console as well. So I have the console opening, and as you can see, as soon as the page loads and we have our Swagger, all Swagger information activities has been recorded and are shown here. You can just go through, and that is a trace. So when you start from here, that is the initial setup, and we have it open in a local host for 7161, and that is our API, product API. Aside from that, we have our activity record in here, and the first time here we have a display name as get. The kind here it is client being recorded, and here it is getting from our Swagger. So here these are default setups that we see because you haven't performed any activity yet. This is coming from our Swagger and the system itself. So that's where we have this. So you can see we have an endpoint Swagger index.html, and we have all this specified. Okay, so that is the trace information for this. Now we're going to make a call to maybe this. Let's put this one here, product. So let's get our product and see the trace. Okay, so we haven't it here. Let's wait. Yeah, so you can see we have this trace. Now I want to check here before the operation performed. We are calling this our service name that we provided. That is a version. And check up here from our DB, we have our database, right? So check it out. This is our database, MySQL. This is the database name, isn't it? And we have it as, say, the server as local. This is our service name version. Then when you come here, that is where we make the select. This coming from the EF core. When you jump again, you are going to the telemetry trace. This is the duration that it took to perform this task. It was get, that's the HTTP verb. The endpoint or the route was API/product. There is a server, there is a port. You see? So you can see we are getting the detailed information. As soon as you click on the button, we are getting everything from here. You can do same to the other ones. Let's say from our post, let's add another one here. So this is product 2. There's a price. Click on execute this. And let's wait. So this is done. Now check it up. So when you check here, let's first see what happened. We are having our post and this is our route, isn't it? We have our server in here. That is the time that it took. We have the same thing. So you can read the same information. That's a trace. As soon as you make any endpoint call, you have everything. And we are having my SQL Server information as well. Okay, so this is our product API service. Great. Now let's go and integrate same to our other API. So I'm going to grab this. Then let's go to our other API. Where is the other API? Go to program.cs file, and in here let's paste this. After pasting, we need to include this namespaces. Well, we have this using being added automatically. This is not product, this is rather an other API. So let's change to other API. That is all that we need to do. Let's go and also run this other API. So right click on this other, then let's start. We can start without debugging since we know it is working perfectly. And let's make sure we have our console put up. So there is the other console, and there is our product console. Okay. Now you see, as soon as the other API is out, we have this information given to us defaultly as we saw in the product API. There is a Swagger information. Okay, now let's make this. Let's also get same order. Let's see the trace from here. And you can see that it got connected to MySQL. This is our demo sync order DB. So you can see here we have database name specified, the server even here. We have our service order API service, same as what you've seen. Aside from that, we have the method display name, we have our kind as a server, we have the duration that it took. So in case this endpoint delays, you can check it out from here. We have the verb, right? We have our route, we have our port specified, and we have our status code. So this 200 minutes was successful. We have it also set up here. All right, so this is working. Now let's click on get summary and see what happens. So execute this. Now let's make sure we execute. So now this is going to get connected or gonna get called to the product API, and I'll get info and I'll return, isn't it? So let's see what will happen. So here we are getting the information. Great. Let's go here and check it out. So we started from here. So we get, this is, we have a database specified in here. Now when you come to the first task, it made a call to API product. You see, that is this one, and it was the source name here was system.net.http, meaning it made an HTTP call. It was get. It took almost 6 seconds because we specified a delay of 6 seconds. The type was get. That is a route. 7161 is the port, and it is an API product, and the ID that we specified was 1, so that's the product ID. This is the status code. We have our service name, and here other API service. So once you have this, we went ahead and populated the current one, which is coming from this get other API and summary. And like we see from here, there's also get. It's coming from a server, and we have the service name, the version, and we also have the status code. You see, so the number, when you make a call, whereby this calls are going to make another calls, all the following calls info are going to be logged in there, so you can see, you can trace it, and I'll see whether it was successful or it wasn't. The time that it took to process it, to make a call to each service, you're going to see it in there as you've seen here. But I know at times reading from here becomes tedious. That is the reason why there's a nice UI that you can log this to, and now when you log it in there, you can see everything clear, and this is interesting. That is a Honeycomb. So Honeycomb, I think you need to subscribe, but it has a free version for testing, so we are using the testing here. When you test it and you're okay with it, then you proceed to get the extra ones. Okay. So let's see now. In other, let me open browser here. So all that you need to do is to put up your browser and then go to honeycomb.io. honeycomb.io. Now when you come here, start for free, so you can start for free. Then start for free. In here you can just log in. Now just follow to create an account. I have mine already created, so I just log in with my account, so I have it set here already. As soon as you log in, you're going to have a dashboard like this, and it tells you that waiting for you to send data to this. Now when you come here, what should you do? You need an API key. It will give it to you automatically. So all that you're going to do is just copy this API key. Now the reason why we're saying that this is neutral or flexible, that you see it has a lot of languages that it supports, but here we are tackling this .NET, and even with that, it has given you the instruction to follow. So whether it's in the Python, Java, Ruby, Go, whatever, you can integrate or use this to log your traces from your application. Let's concentrate or focus on the .NET, because that is what we are doing. Okay, so once you're done with this, it means you're ready to go. Let's close this. And actually, I'm not closing, I'm minimizing. Let me make sure I have copied my key. So get a key here. I don't want you to see, that is why it's hidden like this. Okay, now let's go to the service, and in here, in order for us to integrate this Honeycomb, we need to install the package. So go to solution. Now let's install this package to each of the projects. So let's stop this. Let's right click on dependencies, go to manage NuGet packages. Then in here, under the browse tab, you make sure you have honeycomb.OpenTelemetry. So let's install that. So click on install, then apply. Okay, so we have this installed. We need to do same to the other API. Okay, so go to the product API, manage get packages, and the browse tab, and now paste same. Accept it. That is all. So we have this. Now let's go and integrate it. So in a program.cs file for each, we're going to add it. So come to, after you've had this, add console exporter. let's add the configuration for that. Before we do that, we need to add OTLP exporter. So in here, let's say dot add OTLP exporter. After adding this exporter, then let's go and add this honeycomb. You see we have it here, right? Now this honeycomb, let's specify some configurations, and within that we are saying that c.service name, we have service name and service version. So that's a service name. We have service version also, so we can use this service version. The next one is we have we need to provide an API key. So your key, kindly paste your key here. Then the next one, we have the data set, and here, what is this data set that you want to use? Maybe this is test. Okay, this is I'm just testing. All right, so this is what we basically need to make this run. Let's copy this, save, go to the other program file for the other project, and now add it. So we have same thing here. Now make sure you paste your key, and let's run it. So I have mine already. I'm going to paste it in here offline and I run it so you see what's going to happen. So once I have pasted mine and saved the project, let's start this. Now we make sure our Honeycomb UI is open like this, and we have this notification waiting for you to send data. So let's wait and check it up. Now, while this is running, we also check our Honeycomb for our test data. So as soon as we run this, you can see you see notification from here, data being received, and now automatically it's going to start populating our logs for us. So let's wait. So we have all data tests, we have our other API service, product API service. So these are the two services that we created. Since we have two APIs, these are the services that we created. For now, we have only the default one. So when you click on run query, we have only default for the Swagger. And when you go to traces, let's wait and see. So these are the traces, default traces for Swagger. We haven't made any call yet. Okay. So let's go to our endpoint. Let's say this is other API, and now from here, let's click on try this out. Now this is going to make a call to the other endpoint, and I get data and populate it. And make sure it's going to also delay from 6 seconds in that and then 5 seconds here. So let's click on execute. So that is done. We have our data here. Let's go and check it up. We need to rerun this query. Yeah, you can see we have some info in here, right? But we can check it from here. I think here gives us more clear view than this one. So you can see from here we have there is a root name, get API, there is a verb, and we have a route, API, order, and under summary. Right, this is the duration that it took. So if you want to view the information, click on this trace ID, which is going to open it for you to see everything. Okay, so you can see from here, there's a trace. We call this route. Now this route, there's a database. So it got to this database. That is a order API, not the order DB, to prepare stuff for us. Yes, it did. After from that, it's supposed to get data from this product API. So it went in and then got it. And now here, this API tool has its own database known as a demo sync product DB. And we are aware of that. This is the time that it took. Now when you check here, it took 13 seconds from the product API. And I want to check from product API from our summary, that is the main other API, that is a 13.72726. So you can see that the delay is coming from the product API, and we are aware of it because we issued a delay of 6 seconds, right? So that's the reason why it's delaying. If you want to go beyond this, check up here. We have our other API service, that is a service name, and you can expand also this to see everything. That is a time stamp. This is a duration in milliseconds, and here you have all the info here. There is the verb, that is get. So the first one was the 200 status code is successful. That is a route, API order summary. There is a library name, and when you check here, get API order summary, we have the Windows version, the Windows that I am operating on. Everything is set up in here, and we also have the service or the server. That's the local host. That is a port. This is a service name. That is a version. So you can see that we can read every bit of information from that call from start to finish. You can see everything here, and it has even given you a visualizer that you can check. That is this graph that you can actually look from. So the time to easily get it, Trace has everything for you. You can come in and now get in here. Now let's say we have a status code of 200 minutes working. If I decide to shut down the other API, so that's the product API. Okay, now product API is no more working. Let's go and make sure we start only the other API and make an HTTP call, because other API needs to communicate with the product API to get the product detail, isn't it? While the product API is not live. This error, let's see whether it's going to log it into our OpenTelemetry or this Honeycomb UI for us. We are not checking the error, and we are not logging the error ourselves. It's going to be done automatically for us, and that is a good thing about this OpenTelemetry connected to external UI as Honeycomb. So let's see, get this other summary, and we must have an error here saying the machine refused it because it's not live. Yeah, so we have it here. No connection could be made because the target machine refused it. Let's check our the UI, and here let's run query, run to get the current one, because we have a new thing coming in, right? Check it up. So we have this the trace ID, the same order, and let's click on the ID to view detail and see it. It took 18.22224 seconds. Okay, so it got this other service. It got connected to the database, so this is working. But when it got to the product API, it couldn't. So it means the second service is not responding. When you check the previous one, we saw the responding service here with the database, but here we are not. So it tells you that there's an issue connecting to that. Check it from here. This is the error type, request exception. It is coming from the type of HTTP. The status code is 500. I hope you can see that. And there's a route you and I know. So when you have an issue, it logs it as well. And when you check the tracing, you can see which service is not responding, and quickly you can just react to it. This is a very simple system because here we have only two APIs communicating. So it is very easy for you to know that, okay, A and B, or A is not working or B is not working. But when you have multiple services connected together and you have an issue with one, it becomes difficult for you to know which one is coming from. So in this, as soon as you have this trace here with this Honeycomb UI, you can easily pinpoint and know which one is causing the issue. Then quickly you rush and solve that. So congratulations on completing this course. You've now mastered the essential of tracing synchronous microservices using OpenTelemetry and Honeycomb. We've covered how to log and trace HTTP calls, monitor your microservices performance, and set up an external monitoring with Honeycomb to ensure our systems are running smoothly. With these skills, you can now effectively track down bottlenecks, debug issues quickly, and now gain real-time insight into the health of your microservices. Whether you are scaling up or optimizing your system, distributed tracing is now in your toolkit to help you build more resilient and reliable applications. We are taking things to the next level by diving into asynchronous microservices tracing using OpenTelemetry and Honeycomb UI. Asynchronous systems can be incredibly powerful, but they also introduce new challenges when it comes to tracking and understanding the flow of requests and data. So in this course, I'll break down these complexities and how to effectively trace asynchronous microservices, providing you with the insight you need to keep your systems running smoothly. We will cover everything from setting up OpenTelemetry to leveraging Honeycomb UI for detailed visualization. And we are going to tackle real-world scenario to ensure you can apply what you learned directly in your projects. So whether you are a seasoned developer looking to sharpen your skills or a newcomer eager to learn, you are in the right place. Let's get started on mastering asynchronous microservices tracing and making your systems more transparent and manageable. Just imagine you have an e-commerce application with several microservices, one for the user authentication, one for payment processing, another for inventory management, and so on. When a user places an order, this process involves multiple asynchronous calls between these services. If an issue arises, such as payment failing or inventory not updating correctly, it can be difficult to pinpoint the source of the problem without proper tracing. So that is the reason why you need to know how you can trace issues or trace processes in your microservices. You know, tracing helps you track the journey of your request from initiation to completion, making it easier to understand how data flows through your system. It can also help you measure the time taken for each operation and identify bottlenecks or performance issues that may impact the user experience. And also, in case you have error or you have error in the middle of the way, tracing allows you to pinpoint where this error is coming from. Let's say you have 3 APIs which are going to be communicated. Now, the third or the second or the first API encountered issue. You're going to have it in there using the tracing. Okay, so let's see how we can integrate this in our microservices. We're going to be creating our 2 API projects, and that is what I normally do. I put that and the other API. As soon as we make an product, you want to add product to the database. The other API will be listening using the RabbitMQ, and here is going to publish it, and the other API will subscribe that or consume it and I'll keep a copy. Okay, so in this process, we can have a publisher and a consumer. Now, when you need to make a summary or order summary, whatever, whereby you need a product information, you don't need to go to or make any synchronous call to the product API to get data. You have everything at hand. You can just go in there and populate it and return, making it independent. So actually, having an asynchronous communication between your services make them independent. So they do not depend on any service for data. They can produce everything from start to finish. All right, so let's see. Now we're going to create a new project in here and give it a solution name. Let's first create solution. We add 2 projects or 3. One is going to be a C# library, and that's going to hold the shared models. Okay, so let's have a blank solution created first. And the first project or the first course that we had, the project name was Demo Synchronous Microservice So I think I'm going to make it a demo asynchronous tracing in asynchronous microservice, right? So demo async microservice. And I'll choose a location to store your project. So the name could be name at all. And I think we're going to be having the same setup as we did in the Synchronous. So if you have watched that video, then you can check the timestamp and skip to where we're going to integrate the RabbitMQ and so forth, okay? So here I'm going to click on here to choose a location to store or save this project. After that, you click on create to create this solution. Now we have our solution created successfully. Let's go ahead and add the 3 projects. The first one, we're going to add a C# class library, which would hold all the shared modules for both the API and the other. So choose C# class library, and I'm going to save this as shared. Let's add this to the solution. So now we have this. We're going to add our 2 APIs. So in this microservices, we are having only 2 APIs, okay? But in a real scenarios, here we're going to have, I think, more than 2, because microservices could have more than 2 services. Yeah, but for now, for the sake of this course, let's implement 2 microservices, okay? So choose API, and that's going to be product API. Let's add another one, which is other API, so new project, and the same web API, and this is other API. So in our shared project, we have a default class 1 created. Let's change that to product. That will be a product model. And a product with this, I'm going to have something like an ID, name, and price. That is what I need for my product. So let's change this to product. Now with this, let's specify some properties and the product model. We have an ID. Since you're going to be using an SQL server, you have an ID. And this is going to be a primary key automatically. We have name. So this should be string. Then we have a decimal for price. I normally use these 3 properties, but you can go beyond this. Let's go to our product. And now in our product, there are some packages that what we're going to be using a lot. I have these packages installed in the previous project. So I have these packages, references, they're waiting. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy them and I'll paste them, restore. Pause the video and I'll try to install these packages one after the other. I'm doing this to skip wasting time. Okay. Now within this product API, this is what I'm going to do. After saving this work, I'll just right click on this product API. And I'll go to unload project. So in here, let me just paste this. So pause the video, no rush. Install mass transit.rabbitmq, honeycomb.OpenTelemetry, that is a UI, a visualizer. Install SQL Server tools, OpenTelemetry package itself, console and the exporter, telemetry protocol, hosting, ASP.NET Core, HTTP. So for now, we are not going to be using HTTP because HTTP, we did that in the Synchronous. So I think if you watch that video, you're going to get that concept. So we're not going to implement this here. We're going to be having event-driven one. That is, where we consume event from the RabbitMQ. Okay, asynchronous. So let's clear that. So we have instrumentation.client, SQL client, and that is what's going to give us information about the SQL server. Then we have our swashbuckle. That's the default setup. So I think since we have one installed on top, we can remove this. So pause the video and install these packages. After that, we need to grab the same packages and let's restore this. Let's go to the other API and I'm going to unload the project. Then with the same as I did, let's do same. Save this and restore. So this saves us a whole lot of time, isn't it? Great. So pause them and download them one after the another. Alright, so now you're done. We can rebuild this project to make sure that everything is set. I mean the packages. We haven't done anything, but the packages are set. So we have a duplicate of package reference. And I think let's cross check. We have a package reference in here. Then we have package reference, this. Okay. Oh, okay. So I think we have duplicate of this swashbuckle. So let's remove one. Okay, let's do the rebuild again. Yeah, so that is set. You can see 3 succeeded. It means you have no issue restoring these packages. Let's tackle the product API. That is where we're going to perform our adding of product to database. We're going to create our connection string, register them, and so forth. So in the product API, let's expand the node. In app.setting.json, we're going to create our connection string, isn't it? So let's quickly do that. Since you're going to be using an SQL server, we need to have our connection set up. And I'll give it a name as default. Well, you can change this. The server that I'm going to use here, it is local. So make sure you use your own server. Don't use local if you don't have it. Then have your database. So this is async product DB. Start from that trusted connection. I'm going to use window authentication, so I need to make this activated. So trusted connection, set this to true. If you're using an SQL server authentication, then you can skip this. Set this to true. And the last one, whether you're using an SQL server or window authentication, you need this trust server certificate to make sure everything is set to right position. Save that. Now we're done. Let's create a DB context. So in our product API, we need to add a data access. So let's add the folder short as data. Then let's create our class. This class, we're going to name it as product DB context. But well, give it a name you like. Make sure it corresponds to what you're doing. Then there's our product DB context. Now this product DB context, since we have the package installed, EF core package installed, we can directly inherit from DB context class, and we can create control period to include entity framework call. After that, let's create a constructor with this and pass in options, which takes in this. So control period, then let's choose generate constructor, and in here let's specify the class, so the context that we have created. Aside from that, let's have our DB set, and our DB set, that is product, and I'll name this as product. I believe you are saying that, hey, you've made some mistake. Yes, I'll just clear this one and control dot to include this reference to the project, that is shared library. So once I'm done with that, let's go to our configuration. That's a program.cs file. Let's put some startup here So I'm going to say builder.services.add db context, specify our product db context, takes in an option, and I will say in this option .use SQL server. So use SQL server, which takes in builder.configuration.get connection string, and now this connection string, you specify the connection string as what? Default. After that, you make sure you terminate it. Great. Save that. The next thing to do is let's rebuild this and apply database migration. So rebuild solution to make sure everything is intact. You can actually rebuild only the API, the product API, because that is where what we have tackled, isn't it? But well, I don't have time, so I cannot build the whole solution. So let's see, after we have it in green light, we can go ahead and perform the migration. So we make sure we put our package manager console. We're going to set our product API as startup project, choose a default project of product API, and we are good to go. So startup, when we check the output, it is set, so we can go ahead. Then add migration. Let's set this to any name at all. I'm giving it as first. You can give it any name at all that you want. After this has done, don't worry, we did not specify a property column type for the price since it is decimal, but it's still going to work. It will be added automatically, so that's the reason why it's giving us this kind of error. But that's not actually error, it's information. Alright, so let's update the database. So update it. So that is done. We go ahead to our controller. We have our weather forecast controller. We don't need this, so we can edit this and then make it as product controller. And in that we can clear all this. Let's set this. Let's create constructor and CTOR. That's a constructor. Let's specify. So let's make this as product. The naming could not work, so we need to manually do it. Let's add our product DB context. We say this is context. And let's initialize it so we can do control period. We're going to use create an assigned field. We're going to see down here. Now this should be post, or we can make it as get. And now this, let's make sure this is generic. So I action results, and we can make this as task. Async task. Now down here, we're going to return OK, and we're going to say that await context that we have dot product table, convert everything to a list, add async, and I'll return. So we need to include EF call. Let's do that. Let's terminate it, and that is all. Let's make an add. That's going to be post. So HTTP post, and within this post we have our public, the same async task, takes in the generic of I action results, and in there we are saying add. What are you adding? Product. Create an instance of it as product. And make sure we include the namespace in here, control plus dot. Let's use the shared library. Then what are we doing? We're going to say that we're going to say not even await. We need to specify the context dot product dot add. What are we adding? That is a new incoming product. After adding this, then kindly go ahead, say context dot save changes async. Make sure everything is intact. It's going to return an ID of 1 after it's successfully saved. So we can return no content. Well, it is done. Or we can return created. That is the best. action that we can return since we are going to create. All right, so we have all these two endpoints created. That is what we need here. Okay, so when we run this, this is going to get saved in database. Let's try this and check it out. Now check this out. So when I click on add product, let's maintain the default one, but for the price, let's actually add one, only one. And let's click on execute to make sure a sample is saved. Oh yeah, so created 204. When we click on get everything, well, we have only one record. So that is what you and I are expecting. Or have we added more than one? You can try that and see. We have it. So this is working. And the next thing we're going to do here is we're going to publish this. How do you publish this? Let's publish this to the RabbitMQ as soon as you are done saving. Okay, so we can create an other API to consume it. So in order to publish it, let's do everything in the controller, which is actually, in a normal sense, you need to create a service to handle that. But well, we're doing it here. Okay, for simplicity sake, let's put it here. Now within this, from the add product, all that we're going to do here is, you can see we injected our product DB context, so we can have access to this context. Well, for the same thing applies to the RabbitMQ, we need to also implement the interface of mass transit, because we have that package also installed. So that is an publisher endpoint, publisher endpoint, and we can have publisher endpoint. Let's create an assigned field. So control period, create an assigned field, and after we are done here, before we return it, you want to say that publisher endpoint dot publish this. What do you want to publish? Kindly publish this product. So this is an asynchronous. Another reason why they did not add async to this, should be public async, isn't it? But well, it just published. So let's go ahead and add the await. Okay, so we have this set. Now as soon as we run this is going to publish this to the RabbitMQ. All right, but in order for us to integrate our tracing, we have the packages installed beautifully, and I believe you've done that. That's great. The next thing we're going to do here is we need to provide a metadata, that is information. With the telemetry, what it does is, distributed tracing is all about gathering information, propagating information from the starting or the initial process to the end process. So let's say we are having a product API. We need to start propagating the data, the metadata in here, and it gets connected to the the RabbitMQ. And aside from the RabbitMQ, when we have the consumer, that is an other API, it also has to provide the same metadata so we can grab the two and now access it. Now for the accessibility, it's going to be done by the OpenTelemetry. Okay, so for that package, it's going to handle that for us. So there's no need for us to be doing that. All that we're going to do here is we're going to add this metadata, and this data also actually going to give us more insight on where and where this event or process is coming from. Okay, so now that we have our endpoint being integrated nicely, let's see how we can integrate this OpenTelemetry as well. So after we receive this from the endpoint as a payload, we're going to add it and save it and now publish. But before we're going to publish, we want to add this metadata. But this is what you need to do. We need to create an activity to track and measure the work of publishing a message. So let's keep track of it. But to keep track of it, we need an activity to handle that. So we're going to be creating a variable using keyword. The reason why we are doing this is it's going to get close as soon as it is done, the process is done. So let's have using. We create our activity, and we are saying that this equal to activity source. But before we can do it, let's see, we need to inject this activity source, and let's come on top here in our controller. let's have our activity source, which is going to be private, so static, and it is activity source. Now this activity source is coming from system.diagnostics. So here we're going to give it a name as activity source, then equal to new. So we can use a new keyword, or we can actually still repeat the same name. And here let's give it a source name and then a version. We want this to match with what we have, or we're going to be creating in the configuration. So normally we can use configuration to handle that. So maybe let's put it straight ahead, but we can actually put it in the app.setting.json, and I use it here in order to skip typos. Okay, but here let's say this is product API. There is product API service. That is what it's about. And now let's give it a default version, and I'm going to say this 1.0.0. So we have our activity source created. Now the next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to propagate the data from our publisher to the RabbitMQ and also to the consumer. So let's have a variable to handle that. And we say this is private, the same static, read only, and here we can use text map propagator, and in this let's have a name as propagator. Now with this propagator, we are saying that this equal to, we can have propagator dot, let's use the default text map propagator. So do we have that here? This should be propagators. Then we can have dot default map propagator. All right, so this is what we need. Now this propagator also helps in propagating trace context across different parts of your system, ensuring end-to-end visibility, making everything clear for us. Okay, so now that we have these two states declared, let's go and be using that. So let's copy this activity source, and now let's say here we're going to say that this activity source, so we can start an activity with this. Now that we have, so let's space it. So we are saying the activity is equal to this activity source that you have in here as an object. Then let's start an activity. Now here we're going to publish it. Okay, so the activity that you're going to specify here is going to be let's say, what name do you think we should give? Publish product. This is an event. Yes, publish product event, because you're going to publish product. All the time, make sure your activity, the name that you give to your activities is clear, and it's sync with the context. Okay, and here we can specify the activity kind at dot producer. So you can say produce product event or publish product event. It is the same. So let's have this. The next thing we're going to check here is if this activity is null. Now this activity, as we have declared here, should come in with the service and the version, right? So we're saying that if this activity is not equal to null, that is when we want to proceed and now put in some magic. So here we need to set additional attribute to our span or to the context to give more information about our trace. So the first attribute that we're going to set here, it is messaging.system. Now this tag indicates the messaging system being used. And in this case, we're going to be using this RabbitMQ. Well, if you want to go in for Apache Kafka, you can go ahead and use that. But with this, we're using this RabbitMQ. So let's set that as a messaging.system. All right, so we're going to say this activity.setTag. Now with this set tag, let's provide our messaging.system. And now the value that we're going to set here, it is RabbitMQ make sure they're in lower cases. Okay. All right. So the next thing that we're going to do here is let's also set the messaging destination, or let's specify the destination where the messaging or the message will be sent. So let's say there's an activity, still an activity.set tag, and now we're saying that messaging dot destination, and now the destination, where is it? That is a product created. So here I tell you that it is coming from the product API, because product created means after product has been added to the database, it needs to publish it, meaning product has been created and now it's making an announcement. Well, you see, so product created. But well, you can give it any activity name at all, but you need to make sure it's synced with the context. That is a key thing that should be in mind. Okay. Now for verification purpose, we want to actually add a sample of the model that we're going to publish. So we can actually add the ID, or you can really add the name to know that this is what we use and actually have it in there. So in that, you can decide to also skip this. Okay. Here I'm going to say the set tag, and our set tag, this is, I'm going to say product.name. And now here I'm going to be using product.name. Okay, so whilst I'm done with this, all that I'm to do here is I need to prepare, or you and I, we need to prepare headers to carry the OpenTelemetry trace context with the message. Now this ensures that the trace context is propagated to the consumer service. As I said earlier on, we need to gather the information from here and now push the Rabbit and also to the consumer. So let's start propagating it. So by doing so, we have to add all this to the header. We cannot add it to the value. No, we can't do that. It needs to be on the header of that request. Okay, so let's pass it to the header. And in order to do that, we need to create headers. So we're going to say there's a headers is equal to new dictionary. Since we're going to have in the key and the value, it is advisable, it's appropriate to use dictionary. So dictionary, right? Then here we need string as a key, and now we're going to have an object, a T type as an object. So once we have this, let's inject the current trace context that we have and baggage into the message header. Now when we do this, it allows the consumer service to continue on the trace started by the producer. So we're going to initialize it. The consumer also follow, will join it. I start, consumer proceed, continue. So let's, but before the consumer can proceed, the consumer needs to know where I got to, isn't it? Where the publisher got to, and give the data that it has. So that is the reason why we're going to do that. So let's inject it. So we're going to say propagator. Now this propagator instance that we created, dot, let's have an inject, then our new propagation context. Now this context, there are some parameters that we need to provide. That is, the first is activity.context. Aside from that, we need the baggage.current. So let's have, so we need baggage.current. Which is coming from this OpenTelemetry.current. Then, aside from this, we need our headers. So let's say now from our current, we need our headers. So that's going to be the carrier, right? So what are we going to carry? We have our headers specified already, which contains our set tags, isn't it? So with this, we need to provide headers, key, and value. Now within this, let's open this. So we have our headers, key, and value. And in that, we're going to have our headers. It's an array. So we're going to provide our keys. So within this key, we're going to set this to value. So we're going to add each trace context as a key value pair to the header. So the header, we get the key, not the keys, the key, and we set it to the value. So for each header, set the key and then the value. Because here we have more than one. So we need to set all before we proceed. Okay. Right. So now that we are done with this, let's terminate this. And we can go ahead and now publish the message. So under publishing message, you cannot be using this. We need to extend this method. So let's extend this and I'll specify that context ctx and say that this context, we have a lot of headers. So a lot of header in the headers, right? So let's loop through that and I'll set each header with the key and our value. So let's for each. Then we say this is, let's get our var header in headers that we have populated. In here, what we are saying that the ctx is a context dot headers then dot set. So we set it, and now here this takes in, when you check here, it takes in a key and a value, the same as the dictionary. So let's provide this header current header dot key, and now the current header dot value. Okay, so current header dot key and then dot value. All right, so there is the headers I'm talking about. You make sure you paste, you pass in the correct header down here. And all this should happen within this when this is not null. Okay, that is where all this should happen. Okay, I think we're having an issue here. There's a header. The key here should be capital, that is the key, and not the lowercase. Yeah, so that is solved. All right, so we are set and we are done with that, adding all the other metadata that we need for this context. So we've done that. The next thing we're going to do here is we need to register this OpenTelemetry service also with the Honeycomb in the program.cs file. So we make sure we create an account. So you can go to honeycomb.io and you can start it for free, although you need to pay. But for testing purpose, you can try this. And when it works and you want to use it, that is where you can buy. Okay, so for now you're going to be using for a free trial. So click on that, and here I've logged in already. So when you come here, I have some data service created already, so I'm going to remove all this. So I'll just click on delete, and I'll click deactivate this and delete it. By doing so, I need to provide the name and I'll get it. So in case you create yours and you want to delete it, it's the same thing. That's how are you going to delete that. All right, so here when you first create your account, you have no data being sent to this. This is the interface that you're going to see. You have an API key which is going to be automatically generated for you. Now it supports a lot of languages. So here we have .NET. That is what we are going to emphasize on. And even the steps are here to guide you in if you want to integrate it here. But well, we have our own steps, so we don't need any we don't need this. Okay, so what we're going to do here, we're going to copy this API key. Okay, now when you are done, you see from here we are waiting for it to send us data. So we are still waiting. Let it wait. When we are ready, data will flow in. All right, so the next thing to do here is we come back to our program.cs file under product API, and in here we need to make some registrations or some services, a registration talking about the RabbitMQ and also this OpenTelemetry. So we need to create our service name and our service version. We can get that because we did that in the product controller. we created our service name and our version. So let's grab the service name. For the version, we can remember it easily, isn't it? 1.0.0. Now let's go to our program. Then let's have our constant string variable to handle that, and this is service. This is our service name. Then we have same for version, that is 1.0.0. We're going to be using this here multiple times. That's the reason why I am keeping it like this. Instead of copy and pasting this in there, we can be using this variable to save any feature errors that may pop up whilst typing. Alright, so let's go and add the service of telemetry. We're going to say builder.services.add OpenTelemetry. We have it in here. .configure resources or resource. In here, I'm going to pass in resource. And now with this resource dot add service. Now this service, we need a service name and the version. Since we have the service name, we go ahead and use it straight in there. Aside from this, we can go ahead and now with tracing. So you want to tackle tracing today, and let's specify some options in tracing. And now we're saying that this tracing dot add, we have ASP.NET Core instrumentation. We want to add this. Aside from that, we want to add we don't need client here, so we're going to be adding SQL client. We don't need HTTP client because that was done in the Synchronous. We are not making any HTTP call, so we don't need to add that. But well, you can give it in case future you want to update this and add, you want to make an HTTP call, you can do that. But why do you have to make an HTTP call? Well, if you want to do it, you can put it in there. Now, what we are emphasizing here, it is we want to make sure our data is events. We can derive an event, consume an event. So instead of making a call, you can put that. But well, you can add both synchronous and asynchronous. You can join, combine the two as in the microservices. So well, maybe in the future you can add that. Then let's say, so we add an SQL client instrumentation. Then let's add source. So with this source, we need to specify our service name. And again, let's add console. Since you're going to export to console, now in order for us to have access to the Honeycomb, let's add OTL exporter. Then we can add Honeycomb. So with this Honeycomb, we need to make some configuration. So I'm going to say this is honey. Now with this honey, we're going to, okay, so I think that's how we should handle that. So we have honey dot, then service name. Let's provide a service name. Aside from that, the same honey dot version, and that is a service version, and we need to provide the version that we have. Aside from this, we need what again? We need to provide the API key. So API key, so paste in your key here. I think this shouldn't be like that. It should be, it's an assignment, so we need to assign it. Okay, so we are done. Let's close this. Let's go and add our Rabbit. So we're going to say there's a builder.services.add mass transit. It seems we are not having that here. So add mass transit, which is coming from using mass transit, and in there we need to specify an option. So we're saying that x.use RabbitMQ. That is where we need to use or using RabbitMQ, and in that it has some context that we need to provide and configuration. So config, and now within that config we need to provide the username, the host, the username and the password. That is what we need here. So we're going to say config dot host. Now with this host, these are using a local, so you say rabbit, then local host, isn't it? Then the next thing that I need to do here is it takes in some configuration. That is where you need to specify the username. Now a default username is going to be guest, lowercase, and now the default password is also going to be same. So let's change this to password, and that is it. Let's terminate them. Okay, so we have it set. Now let's go in there, and so we have our publisher ready. Now this is going to publish a data to the Rabbit and also to the Honeycomb. Let's give it a try, but before that we need to create a Docker file to handle this RabbitMQ image. So in any of the projects, let's say the product API, right click and add new item. We're going to choose YAML file, so click on YAML. You can have the file popped up, and we're going to name this as Docker Compose. So with this Docker Compose, we can specify the version or skip that. It's still going to work. Okay, so let's say this services. Now this services, let's say which service are we going up for? That is RabbitMQ service. Now this RabbitMQ service, we need an image under. Now which image are we talking about? We want to, I think this service should, I think that's okay. So the image that we need here, we need a RabbitMQ MQ 3.8. So 3.8 Alpine. So we have our management dash Alpine. So we have our image specified nicely. We need our container name. So container underscore name. So what is the name? Let's say this is RabbitMQ. That is a container name. Okay. The next thing that we're going to do here is we need to specify the port, right? So let's say this is port. Now with this port, we need 5672. That's the default port. 5672. That is for the broker. So we have 5672. 5672. So in and out you map it. And now for the UI, we need to also do same. Now for the UI, it is 15672. 15672. Mapping in and out 15672. Okay. Save it. So let's fix this. There should be a space. Right, so we have our RabbitMQ having an image. Under that, we have our container. We have our ports. All of these coming under the RabbitMQ. Okay, so the errors are gone, and here should be, I think, 3.8. Alright, so once we have our port, let's specify our environment. Environment should come the same line. So we have an environment, and our environment, let's specify our username, default username, and our default password. Okay, so that is a default underscore user. But before that, we must have RabbitMQ underscore username, and this user is guest. Then we have password at same guest. Let's specify volume. So volumes, and volumes, let's specify RabbitMQ volume. To make sure this the driver type here, it is local. So that is what we need to do. Let's save this and right click on this file, go to open containing folder. Let's move this is a Docker Compose file, so move this to the root here. So we can drag and drop it again to make sure it is in. Alright, so now that we can open our package manager console. But well, normally I want to use a terminal instead. So I have a terminal here. So let me navigate to the root folder, so project, and I'll just go in and grab the name of the project. Open a terminal and get into it. So if I click on ls, you can see I have the Docker file, and all that I need to do is Docker Compose app. So we are starting this. Now I have the image already installed, so it's going to create an instance and start working with it. But if you don't have it, it's going to pull it from the Docker-Hub and I'll run it after it's done. So let's wait and see the logs for that. So while it is running, the next thing we're going to do here is we can start working with the API. Alright, but before we do that, I'll just go offline and grab my API key and add it, because you want to make sure our data has been sent to the Honeycomb. Okay, so I have added mine peacefully, and let's make sure, or let's verify if this is running. Yes, of course it is. So we can put up our browser and now access localhost of 1.5. So localhost, then we can have what is it? Is it 1.5? Let's go and check the compose file. It is 15672. So 15672. Then this should give us access to the RabbitMQ management. Okay, so you see it is in here. Click on guest, and now we are in. So this is a RabbitMQ management view. So you can see currently there's no connection, there's no channel, because we haven't run our API project. So you can see there's no name, exchange name here. Now that it's working, let's give this a try. We are running our API project, and we make sure we have our, yes, this is also open. As soon as you run, it's going to receive data from here automatically and start configuring for us. So the next thing that we're going to make, when we make any HTTP call or any other database call, we can see the tracing log here. Let's see. So I have an error here. Did you encounter same? You're supposed to add MQ. So RabbitMQ. Let's do it again. So this is ready. When we check our console, we should have information on that. And that's what we have, because we have this log trace. But with this, at times it becomes difficult for us to read. Okay, so you can see now. Let's make a call here. If we check this honeycomb, we got going to be seeing the same thing. Data has been received. Now processing, we have product service. That is a service that you and I created together. So I click on run query, and it's going to populate it in here. Click on traces and check it out. There's a default trace that we have. Now this is coming from our Swagger, so nothing much relevant here. Just coming from our Swagger, and we have an endpoint down here. Swagger v1 swagger.json. So let's try and check up. So we have, let's go and add product. So this is new product. We have the price. And click on execute. In case this process is successful, you're going to log it in there. In case it isn't, you're also going to have it. So whatever the case is, you're also going to have trace to it. Okay. Now we have it created, so successfully created. Let's go and check. Now when you check this, let's go back and let's rerun the query. We have an item here, right, in a graph. Click on traces, and you're going to have an endpoint. You should have an endpoint. Rerun this. Yes, after refreshing, we have it. So you can see that's a post. It is coming from product. And let's click on this trace ID. As soon as it opens, let's see, there's an event. We made a post call. The whole process took about 12 seconds. And we connected to a product DB contest. That's an async product DB contest. So in the context of adding this product and now saving it, it took 460 milliseconds, less than 1 second, right? Then we sent it to RabbitMQ as a product published product event. It took just 1 second. So within this, you can know which section is delaying in case there's a delay. By seeing this time use is efficient. Now we are not consuming it. That's the reason why we are not seeing anything. We have at least 2 spans here. We are not consuming it, but you can see this, right? Let's go and check our RabbitMQ to exchange. You can see we have share.product. And if I click on this, if I click on this and go to queues, currently you have no queue because you haven't subscribed to any. But we have an exchange here, which is waiting. And we have one channel created. Okay, now let's go and consume this to make this clear. Let's minimize this. Don't close it, minimize it. But we can close this. Let's go to our product or other API. Now we're going to make copy and paste, okay? So from this, let's copy our connection string. We go to other API, then our connection string, let's paste it down here and do some needful change. So instead of product, you know what to do, right? Other. We have the packages also installed in the other API, so we can skip that. Let's create a DB context. So we can copy this data here, then paste it in an other API. And for this product DB, we're going to change this and make it as other DB context. We need an other model. Now this model are not going to be used by the product, so we can keep it, we can limit it to this context of the order API. So let's add class which takes in order, and in each order that a client will make, we must have an order ID. Since it's going to be saved, we must have product ID. Then we must have quantity of the item purchasing. Okay. Now with this, let's go and add it to our database, right? So in an order DB context, we can rename this as order DB context. And with this order, we say this should be orders. Then the model here, it is order. Let's grab this and now paste it. So we are done. We need to add the product. Let's include this. We need to add product. Since we want to make this independent, it means whatever information that this needs to work, you need to have it in its database. So we have this as product. Let's include the namespace. So add reference to the shared project. So we have a two tables in our database. Okay. Let's go and register this. So we can also go to the program.cs file of the product API, and let's paste it and change the DB context. So here, and now we need to use order DB context. Okay. Need to include entity framework call. Let's rebuild solution and add migration to the order API. So pull your package manager console, set the order API as startup as we did. Update database. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do here is we need to create our controller to handle that. Let's make this as order. So order controller. Let's remove all this and inject order DB context. So order DB context, which is coming from data folder. We have our context. Then for this get, we're going to get everything from the database tables. So let's return OK with context dot product dot toList async. This should come from EF call. Okay, you can go ahead and add the orders, and then we can go beyond and add maybe summary. So let's use this. We have product list, and this is what we're going to consume at the end. Okay, so we're going to consume it as soon as a product makes an addition. It's going to publish it to the RabbitMQ, and we're going to sit down, listen, grab it, and now save a copy. Within this process, a log must be created or a metadata must be created, propagated from the publish to the consumer, so we can see the entire flow. So in case there's an issue somewhere, we can figure it out, whether it's getting from the database or the API endpoint or whatever, we can get it. So let's maintain this to fulfill our practical or this purpose of this testing. You can go ahead and add maybe others. So you can make a copy of this. And maybe this could be others. Then let me make here as products. So instead of products, it could be others. So let's go and register our services. So we go to program.cs file from the product API. And now that is where we have our service name. So we can grab our service name from here. Then we move on to the RabbitMQ. So let's grab all this. Let's go to our program. And in here, let's paste this. Let's change from product API to this is other API. Other API, you have a version also specified already. Okay, then we are having this, so we don't have to change anything. What we need to do is to change only the service name, and that is all. Now we need to consume, because this is a consumer, so we need to create a consumer for this. In the other API, let's add folder, which is going to be product consumer. Product consumer. Now in this consumer, let's create a class. So consume product. Now consume product, it should inherit from iConsumer, which comes from the transit. Then which model, that is product. We need to include the namespace, and also we need to implement the interface of this. So what we did in the product controller, let's go and grab same. We're going to be using maybe not all this, excluding this publish endpoint. Let's grab that, and in here let's paste this. Let's remove iPublish endpoint. Now this should be other DB context. Let's include a namespace for this, or the using statement. Let's change the activity source from API to from product to other. The same version, and that is it. So after we have this, we need to create constructor and inject this, isn't it? So CTOR. We need our constructor. Then let's use this dot is equal to that. Now in our consume, let's extract the tracing context from the message headers. This context contains headers, so we can extract, because we propagated it from the publisher and we attached the header, so we can extract it here. Let's go and do that. So we can say that this is a parent context. This is equal to the propagator that we have. And now this propagator dot extract. So under this, let's specify default for the start, and also we need to specify the context dot headers, because that is actually what contains the metadata. So we specify a header and our key mapping to, let's try to get the header value and I'll convert it to string, because you know in string value, headers value are string value, so we cannot grab them straight unless you convert them to string before we can have access to them. So let's do that. But first of all, we need to check if headers dot then try get header. We specify the key over there. Then let's create a variable to handle the value. So we say out var as what? The value. Then let's convert, so end, that is end. Oh yes, that is end. This value is string, call it header value. What can we do? We want to return new array of this, then specify the header value. So we are going to return it as an array of strings since there are many. So with this, we can even use without the bracket. Okay. Then, but in case it is, we check and it isn't, what are we going to do? We want to return an empty list. Okay. So let's return empty list. So we can use the else here. Then we say return enumerable.empty. Okay, so we can use this, or we can use this also. It's going to work. Alright, so after we are done with this, what is the next thing that we can do? Let's close this. Let's start a new trace span for consuming the message. So now we have the one propagated from the producer. Now let's also create our own. Then we attach it and send. So with this, let's go to let's save this. Go to the product controller. And now where we started here, let's grab like this. Go to our consume product and now paste it. Okay, so we create our activity, we give it a name, and now with this we're going to consume. So it's not published anymore because here it is going to consume, isn't it? So we say consume product event, and now check it up. The kind here shouldn't be producer, rather consumer. So it should be consumer. Then with this, we need to also specify the same thing, messaging system destination. So that's the product created. We have our product name. So this product name, you cannot get product name here unless we extract it from the context. Now the context contains message, which contains the name of the product. So here we are not going to inject it anywhere, so we can remove this. Then you're not going to also publish. After we have this, what we're going to do here is we're going to add it to the database, isn't it? So we say we have our DB context. Let's see, we have our DB context. Let's make it like this. Our DB context, and so with our context that we created in here, we can go ahead and say that this context dot product dot add this context dot message. Then await, let's say db context dot save changes async. Okay, maybe you can decide to print it to the console or whatever. It's still going to work. But before we do this here, we don't need to add it straight like this because it's coming from a server. So we need to create new product where it takes in the name, because when adding we don't need ID. Then we say this is a price, and that is equal to the same context dot message dot price, and that is it. So this is what we need to do. Okay, so now that we have our consumer product created, let's grab that, go to the program.cs, and now here we should go to the program of this other API. So you can see we have it here as other API. Now let's add it. So go to the RabbitMQ, and now here let's add x.addConsumer. Then let's paste the consumer that we have created. Let's make sure we include the using statement. And aside from that, we should configure the receive endpoint. So in here where we have the config, so configure dot receive endpoint. What is the name? It is product queue. Then you want to make sure we provide the context to this method that we have created. So in order to do that, we need to configure that method to the context, or configure the context to the method. So we say e.configure consumer. You can see we have it in here, and I'll pass in your consumer product. I think consume product, and specify the context. The context that we specified on top here, we need to pass it on to this method. Let's terminate this. Okay, so with this, I'm going to paste my API key here. Then we're going to run this and check it out. But before that, let's reboot solution once more. So after building, I think although 0 failed, but we have some warning DB context. And with this, we need to create constructor and pass it on. So CTOR says we grab this, then we copy all these DB contexts, making reference using this keyword referring to the variable created here. You want to get DB context and assign it to this incoming DB context. Yes. So now if you rebuild it again, I don't think you're gonna have that issue anymore. Yeah, so we have no issue again. So before, let's check if our table actually exists. Now I checked it and it's not found. So this I'm going to do. I have to delete this. So let's add a migration again. As package manager console, then we make sure we have a default project. Let's set this to other API. Okay, then so add migration. We give it name as first. Then we can specify output. So on the output, open the folder and now do everything in here as migrations. Let's change the location and see whether it's going to work for this. So the name already exists because we did not delete the old migration folder. Now that it is gone, let's do this. Alright, so you can see that from here we have it set, and I want to check our data folder. We have the migration folder also created. Now let's do justice to this by typing in update database. So now that we have the migration done, let's go and first run the product API. we're going to publish, we're going to save the product and unpublish it, but there's no consumer because we haven't started the other API. When we check the RabbitMQ, we must be able to see the message in there. And also when we go and check the trace, we might see that the order hasn't consumed it. It's only the published product event which has gotten what? Fired. So let's try that, and then we run the other API and see. Yeah, so the product API is running. Now when you check the log, there's a product API log. We have a whole lot, but there is a Swagger, and it's about Swagger because when you check this, that's the part that you can see we haven't performed any endpoint operation. So the default one is the Swagger and now the window version and etc. Okay, so we're getting trace of everything that we're doing on the system. Now let's see. So I'm going to click on try this out, execute. So this is to get product. We want to add product. That is the main thing that you want to do. So let's say this is product. So this is new product added. Then here we are having the ID of 1. But I think there's an issue here. When we go to our solution again and go to where we're consuming this, we need to specify the parent context. So grab this, and in here parent context dot activity context, so we can have everything in section. So let's add that, and I think we need to rerun this. Okay, so it is on again. Now let's add the product. So that is new product added, and we have a price. Click on execute, and let's wait and see if we're going to have created. Yes, we have created. Now let's go to, we don't have our other API running, it's only this product API. Now after we add it to the database, we want to publish it. So let's go to our that is a Honeycomb. And also before we go to that place, we can also check for our RabbitMQ. Now here we have our product queue. Maybe let's refresh this. So within our product queue, if I click on this, maybe get message. So we are having a message here. So new product added. That is the message, although it hasn't been consumed yet. It is yet to be consumed because the consumer is not active. As soon as the consumer becomes active, it's going to consume this message and it will be ripped off from here. Okay, so now we see our message over here. Let's go to the Honeycomb, and let's also verify from then, check the log or the trace. So let's refresh this. Let's run query. So let's make sure we have only one service, that's the product API. So if I click on traces, there are some logs in here. If you want to check, we have these graphs, and here we have post product. If you want to find the latest one, when you go to the home, you can find the latest. So post was just added few seconds ago. So this is so 2 minutes ago we had this post product. So let's go and tackle that. So from the query, and under query, our traces, run query, traces. Now click on this post. So you want to see what happened. So you can see from here that the whole process took about 9 seconds, 287 milliseconds. Now it got added to the database. So that's an async product DB. It took just 232 milliseconds, very fast. Aside from that, it published it to the event, that is the RabbitMQ. So it took about 785, meaning less than a second. Now if I click on the DB, I'm going to say the database name as async product DB, the system as MSSQL, the time that it took, and other related information about the Windows and the operating system and etc. If I click on this publish product event, I'm going to see also the information about this. The type is a producer as we specify in the context. Okay, so and that is the event name, publish product event. So now that we've seen also this is a service, now that we've seen this, let's go and run our other API and see what's going to happen. So I click on other API, debug, start new instance. So you can see that we have the login here, and as soon as we added a new product, you can see we have an endpoint / product, and we can have a full, so that's the url.path, so / product. The type of this verb here is post, and the server port was 7075, right? Good. Let's also pull out and check for the other API console while it logs everything, the trace. You can see we have the window version, the type, and everything. So all these are the logs. You can see the display name here that I'm consuming is a consume product event. The kind is consumer. So this is a starting. We have a service. We have the service version. We have the message.system. So that's the RabbitMQ. That is what we specify as a metadata as a tags. We specify the messaging destination as a product created. And now check it out. Product.name as new product created. So it means the type that we specified after consuming, it is also working. Now let's see. So we've consumed this. We can cross-check from our product. Try this out. Then here it's going to give us a list of products. We should find one. So this is what we just added. So new product. So it has been added here as soon as it was published, or as soon as we run the system. Now let's go and see the trace. So here, if I click on exchange and I queues, product queue, and I click on get message, you can see queue is empty. Since the message has been consumed, we have nothing. Great. Let's check our trace. So from here, click on home, and we can see the latest event. So from recent traces, this just came in. Okay, so post product, recent event. Okay, that is still 6 minutes. Let's choose this for product service. Click on other API service, and you're going to see the latest event came in. That's a minute ago, right? That's another API. Get product service endpoint was called. Okay, now we can go to query, and let's check the trace. Instead of this, select all data sets in the test, so you can combine both services data. Then click on run query. So in here, go to traces, and we have get other product, we have post products, right? So here we can check from the post, click on this ID and check the trace. So that ID that we clicked, that is when you publish product. First thing is, what does it do? It has to save it, and it took 232.7 milliseconds. After saving, it pushed it to RabbitMQ with this event. So it took 758.4 seconds, meaning less than a second. After that, a consumption was performed, or it was established with this event, consume product event, and that came from a different service. This service is an other API service. You see? And as soon as this got it, it also saved it into its database, and that is an async OD other database. and from this other service. So saving this, it took 2, 4, 5. Saving this, it took 2, 3, 2. So when you compare, when saving the product in its original database was faster than saving it into the external database, 2, 4, 5. And I want to check here, after the process here, it took 7, 5, 8 in the RabbitMQ when it was published. Now check it here, consumption here took 9.825 seconds. So you can see this is also faster than this, because here publishing is faster than consuming. So you can see here we are having all the traces. We are having only 2 endpoints, only 2 services which are communicating with an event base. Let's say when you have about 10 services which will consume, publish, consume, publish, consume, you're going to see everything here. And in case there's an issue getting to another service, you can see that issue in here. And based on that, you can trace and pinpoint that this service has an issue, has problem, or this particular section has problem. Let's go and fix it. So when you click on any, it gives you more insight that you can read about the specific section. And that is it. So you've seen how we can perform microservice tracing in asynchronous microservices, right? We've done the synchronous one, and this is asynchronous one using the RabbitMQ and Honeycomb with OpenTelemetry. Alright, so thank you so much for joining me in this course on Asynchronous Microservices Tracing with OpenTelemetry and Honeycomb UI. You know, by mastering these techniques, you gain the tools and knowledge to monitor, debug, and optimize your synchronous systems effectively. We've also covered a lot of ground from the basic of OpenTelemetry and Honeycomb UI to advanced tracing technique in a real scenario using the product endpoint and now the other endpoint. So implementing robust tracing in your microservice architecture is very important for maintaining performance and reliability. And I hope this course has equipped you with the skills to do just that. If you have any question or need further assistance, feel free to reach me out. Don't forget to also like, subscribe, and hit on the notification bell to stay updated with our latest content. Happy tracing, and see you in the next course.